So I was walking through the park this summer about a month and a half ago, and there was this Muslim woman, this sort of Northern European Muslim woman there playing with her kids in the stream that runs through the park. Or at least at the time I assumed that she was a Muslim woman. I assumed that she was probably a Christian, 90%, 99% chance that she was probably a Christian, and that she'd married a Muslim man and adopted his religion. But thinking back on that, I might well have been wrong. It might well have been that she's married a Muslim guy, but she's still not a Muslim. She's just dressing in that kind of way, either because he's insisted that she must dress in that kind of way and cover herself up with these flowing robes and cover her hair up and all this kind of stuff. Or it could be that he's not insisted on it, but that she's, like a lot of us do, like I do. My wife tells me what she'd like me to wear, and I just wear it. I don't have to, but I do that to please her, and she'd do that to please me. So I don't know, and I don't want to comment on the particulars of this woman and her life, because I don't know, and I've thought about that since, but I've just made me think about the general case, because it does happen that Muslim men marry non-Muslim women and they convert to Islam, and 99% of the time, because of course a Muslim man can only marry a Christian, outside of his religion can only marry a Christian or a Jew. They still have to be people of the book. If they're a Hindu, or heaven forbid a scum atheist, then it really isn't on. They've got to be a Christian or a Jew, and so 99% of the time in the UK, therefore that's going to be Christian, isn't it? But how does that work? I can't really get my head around how, just because you fall in love with somebody, you can adopt their religion like that. I mean, it's fair enough adopting somebody else's golf club or tennis club or something and saying, okay, I'm marrying this person. There's no point me playing golf at the next town's golf club anymore when they're a member of that. Let's both be a member of the same golf club, and then we can both have a round together. That kind of makes some sense, although I find golf shit boring, so it doesn't really make sense for me. I'd just rather not play golf. But that kind of makes sense. But religion's a little bit more than that. If you're a Christian, the one thing that you believe more fervently, the foundation of your belief, is that Jesus isn't just a prophet, but he's the Son of God. And to say, well, all of a sudden now I've fallen in love with this guy, all of a sudden now I don't think that Jesus is the Son of God after all. Now I think he's just a prophet. And this guy Muhammad that I didn't think was a prophet, well, now I think he is a prophet, and he's the final prophet, and he's the main prophet. And it's all changed. My views, my opinions, my beliefs have all changed because I love this person. It just doesn't make any sense. I can't get my head round that. I can't imagine falling in love with somebody who believed in alien abductions and thinking, well, I love this person so much, I must believe in alien abductions as well. Surely these kind of conversions following marriage are just a sham. It's just a fraud. It's just a pretense. There is no genuine belief, or if there is a genuine belief, it must be amongst people that have given their beliefs so little thought, whose beliefs to begin with are so shallow as to be virtually worthless, not to mention foundationless. Well, moving on from that, I decided to do a bit of reading on the internet on this, and I found this marvellous piece. It's a kind of marvellous fusion of illogic and sexism, all bound into one, by Sheikh Jassim Al-Mutawa, and it's on the site Islam Way Sisters, the place for teaching and learning about Islam and women. And it dealt with the subject as to why it's okay for a Muslim man to marry a non-Muslim woman, a Christian or Jewish woman, but it's not okay for a Muslim woman to marry a Christian or Jewish man. And let me try and retell for you the logic. I will give you a link to it so that you can read the piece in its full absurd glory. But this is the logic, and it's one of these marvellous bits where there's two separate pieces of reasoning that both kind of, if you just heard one of them, you can see some sense in it. But when you put them both together, it just fucks your brain up. And so this is it then. The reason that a Muslim man can marry a non-Muslim woman is that the non-Muslim woman, the Christian woman, for example, all the people she regards as prophets, he regards as prophets as well, so that when the Muslim woman is teaching their children that Jesus was a prophet, that Abraham is a prophet, that Moses is a prophet, that there's no problem. The Muslim man is happy to go along with that. He just wants to tack on this extra bit that Muhammad is a prophet as well, and this is what God had to say via his conduit, Muhammad. So there'll be no friction. The entire piece admits the fact that the Christian woman thinks that Jesus is also the Son of God, and that might just be a slight cause for friction because her husband doesn't. Now, the presumption here must be that she's so subservient and downtrodden. That is Sheikh Jassim al-Mahawa's expectation, I think. That she's so subservient and downtrodden that she won't say anything about that. But the Sheikh then goes on to explain what would happen if a Muslim woman married a non-Muslim man, and why that really wouldn't work. Because what would happen is the non-Muslim man, let's say the Christian man, would teach the children about his prophets, the same as the woman had done in the previous example, and then the Muslim woman would tack on her bits about Muhammad also being a prophet, etc, 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 and Muhammad acting as a conduit for further guidance from God. But the non-Muslim man wouldn't be happy with her saying these things, and that would be a source of friction in the marriage. Quite why it would be a source of friction in the marriage this way round, but not a source of friction in the other way round, is left magnificently unanswered in all of this. We're just left with these two pieces of reasoning which just don't lock together in any way, shape or form. The only way you can lock them together in any way, shape or form is just to assume a society that's so sexist, where women are so submissive and so subservient that basically whatever the bloke says goes. So that if a Muslim man marries any other kind of woman, it really doesn't matter what the fuck she tells the kids. He'll just tell her to shut up if needs be, because what he says goes. And we couldn't allow that to happen to Muslim women, because the kids might be brought up not as Muslims. So it's best that Muslim women don't marry non-Muslim men, because we have this societal assumption, or at least Sheikh Jassim al-Mahawa does. But this is the great part about this article. It's almost the last line. And he says this: discussing these issues with the Westerners is so important, so that they get to know Islam better and understand the logic behind social rules and issues. I really don't expect that Sheikh Jassim al-Mahawa will get to watch this video, but I've got to say, Sheikh, I thank you for the efforts that you've taken with this, but I cannot see the logic behind this. All you've demonstrated to me here is that there is no logic behind this. Let me be cynical, if I could, for a minute here, Sheikh. What I think might actually be going on here, historically, despite this bit of bullshit reasoning that you've given, what might actually be going on here is that if you allow Muslim men to marry non-Muslim women in societies where men always held the whip hand, what you would be doing, especially if you allow a man to have more than one wife, is to create a whole load more Muslims in some kind of fucking breeding program, a bit like the Catholics with contraception. Rather than converting people with the strength of your argument, it's a lot simpler just to breed them up. The old Jewish thing, give me the child and I'll give you the man, or whatever. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Whereas if you have a Muslim woman in these highly patriarchal societies where women are subservient to men's needs, desires and beliefs. If that Muslim woman marries a non-Muslim man, she may well be expected to convert to Christianity or to Judaism, and at the very least, she isn't going to be able to bring those children up as Muslims. So let's cut the bullshit here, Sheikh. This is fuck all to do with logic. And I've had this explained to me as a Westerner, as a non-Muslim. You haven't demonstrated the logic to me. What you've demonstrated is a cynicism. I'd have been much happier if you'd just been honest and given me the historical perspective as to why really this situation has come about. So anyway, thank you for watching. It's good to be back. If you have any comments you would like to make, knock yourselves out. If you'd like to make a video response, why not make hay while the sun is still shining, given that Google YouTube has decided in its infinite wisdom to scrap video responses. That seems to be one of the key things. They might not be watched that much, but as Mr. Repzion said, that's often because some kind of viral video attracts about 5,000 fucking spammed video responses that nobody clicks on. There are certainly sections of the YouTube community where YouTube responses, video responses are used and form an intrinsic part of what makes YouTube YouTube. Anyhow, that's perhaps another rant for another day. Probably not even worth a rant, because if YouTube want to do it, they're just going to do it and fuck a lot of us, to be quite honest. I'm going to try to make some more videos over the next few weeks. Not next week though. I'm cycling across Britain for 3 days next week. It's an horrendous route that me and my buddies have picked. I'll leave you with a video link to probably the worst. I think it's supposed to be the worst hill climb in UK. It's Hardknott Pass in the Lake District that we're going over, sort of like day one, part one, and it doesn't get a lot better after that. So I'll give you the link to that. You can have a look what I've got in my future next week. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and bye for now.